It's 6 minutes after 8 o'clock in the morning, and welcome. It's NRN Radio 786, the program with the views that eat the news. My name is Tashriq Trubody. With you till 9 o'clock this morning. We have just a couple of minutes, just over 15 minutes or so left for the program this morning. And you are most welcome to send me a text or a voice note to the number 0786 10 11 12. My next guest is somebody who is currently based in Palestinian, a Palestinian medic based in Germany, completing his residency there. He is currently in South Africa for a very short stay. He is leaving Cape Town very shortly to go to Johannesburg and then goes back to where he is currently residing. And of course, he is leading the Palestine Leads tour in South Africa. He, of course, is Dr. Bassel Abuwarda. He is here to showcase the dignity and the courage that Palestinians have had to show for the endurance of a genocide that they are subjected to at the moment, particularly, of course, in the Gaza Strip. Dr. Abuwarda is a renowned surgeon practicing in Germany, and he's been personally experiencing the ongoing Israeli genocide, having lost 57 family members in the siege on Gaza. He has worked at the Al-Shifa Hospital alongside Dr. Mads Gilbert, that some of you may recall, during the war on Gaza in 2014, having treated casualties and co-founded the SaveGazaProject, instrumental in rebuilding the Shams Al-Amal school, as it were. And so he joins me now live in studio as we piece together his experiences and particularly his heritage, which has had a part of it lost with those family members that have now all been martyred in Gaza. Dr. Bassel, our condolences to you. A very good morning and assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Radio 786.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Tell us about your family in Gaza.
So, on the 13th of October, I have a family that lives in Gaza, first of all. On the 13th of October, it was the worst day in my life, in which my both father and mother have been killed in an Israeli strike in our house in Gaza. My brother was also injured during this airstrike, and this was only the beginning. After that, I kept losing many other members of my family. And in the time that Colors of Hope and Salam Foundation sent me the invitation to come to South Africa, the number was 57. But the number has been increased dramatically in the last few weeks and reached to over 100 family members. The last one was a few days ago, Muhammad Isa Abuwarda, killed by an Israeli sniper in south of Gaza.
Tell me about your parents.
It's the hardest thing in the world to lose one of the parents, to lose the father or the mother. But in that day, I lost both of them. They were old people. My father was 71, my mother 65. They could have been a threat to anyone. They just have been targeted while staying at home doing nothing. The thing is, these, as with my father and mother, are the lucky one. They were able to be buried because they were killed in the beginning of the war. Many of the Palestinian people that has been killed right now don't have this privilege. But the most difficult part for me is we don't know where they're buried. Even if we want to visit their grave, even if I was on to visit their grave one day, read al-Fatiha for them, put some flower on their graves, I don't know where they are, and no one does.
And before the 13th of October, between the 7th and the 13th, and a little bit after the 7th, when there was the amassing of those tanks at the border of Gaza, and when they finally moved into Gaza, and when some of the aerial bombardment, of course, had started, did you have contact with your parents before the 13th? And what were those sort of last conversations that you've been having with them?
I was able to contact with them in that time because Israel was not cutting the internet and communication at that time, but now they do. It wasn't easy to contact with them because there was no electricity, the phone was not charged, but I was almost able to contact them every day in that time. And the last conversation with my father was, he told me that he distributed my family members into different areas in Gaza, sent my sister to the north in Jabalia, the other sister in Deir al-Balah, and my brother refused to lead them and stayed with my family. And I just asked him, why did he do that? And he told me, just in case of our house get targeted, not all family members die at once. And he was right. And that's what he did.
And then he died with his wife.
Exactly.
And when you got the news?
I got the news at 6:30. My sister called me, trouble in her voice, crying. I wasn't even able to understand what she was saying. At the beginning, she told me that only my brother got injured. She herself didn't know that. And my brother was taken into the hospital. I was trying to contact everyone I know in the hospital, Shifa Hospital, in order to know the situation of my brother. I wasn't able to reach anyone. But few hours later, I got the phone call from my brother-in-law telling me that my brother is going under surgery and my parents didn't make it. The people want us to be okay. They think they will be okay, and time will make us forget, and time will make the pain easier. But I can assure you, it doesn't, and it won't. We cannot be okay. We will not be okay as long as we are witnessing a live stream genocide till this day.
And the barring how we respond to this genocide through the boycotts and the emotions that we feel and the arguments that we have and the discourses that we see, if you strip away all of that, you had lost your parents. I lost my mother due to sickness about a year or so ago. And I know of family and friends that when they lose parents, it is a very difficult, even when they're at an age that we know they are going to be leaving this dunya, and that life is not guaranteed forever and a day. But to lose your parents in this way, I can almost imagine before the 13th of October, the anxiety that you must have been going through every day, knowing whether they're going to be safe, whether the family relatives that your father sent to different parts of Gaza, whether they are safe and whether they have something to eat and something to keep them out of harm's way. And then, of course, on the 13th, to be informed in that sort of way. At the end of the day, you are still a son who has just lost both his mother and his father, which I cannot begin to comprehend how you must have felt in all of this. And your story is one of so very many Palestinians that have had to experience this. And so the 57 or the 55 other members that have passed on, what, as the days were passing and you're increasingly hearing of more family members getting injured, friends that you know, people with whom you have grown up with, talk us through post the 13th of October in trying to realize how all of this was coming together.
The problem is I didn't have enough time to grieve because I'm worried about my other family member. I'm still worried about my two sisters and one brother who's still living in Gaza right now. My brother and sister who are living in the north now are suffering from the starvation because no humanitarian aid is allowed to go to the north of Gaza. The other one is almost, I can tell you, she is staying with relatives. Over 60 to 70 people are staying in the same house. It takes hours for them in order to use just a toilet. You can imagine that. It's not easy thing to live with. And keep waiting for the bad news every day. It kills you slowly. The only way that I'm sure now that one of my family members didn't die is by reading the name of thesis every day to make sure none of my family members is one of them.
And things have deteriorated so much to the point where sometimes getting a name published is very difficult. I remember in around November, December still, how there were Palestinians in the diaspora like yourself that said when there was no communication, they would literally check the names of the deceased that were announced for that day to look whether there are family members amongst those. Were you one of them that did that?
Of course, and I still do.
How are you coping? Are you coping?
I'm trying to. No one can cope with something like this. No one. It's just out of ordinary. It's just too much for a human being to handle. But this is the situation right now. This is the reality, and we have to live in it with it.
We are talking, having a very difficult conversation this morning with Dr. Bassel Abuwarda, a Palestinian medic that is busy finishing his residency in Germany. He's a renowned surgeon, and of course, having worked previously with war and victims of war, grown up in Gaza, worked alongside people like Dr. Mads Gilbert and others, and having lost 57 members of his family, 2 of whom had been his 71-year-old father and 65-year-old mother on the 13th of October. The stories that we've heard coming out of Gaza are quite harrowing. And you know this best as a surgeon in that particular field of medicine. The stories that patients were being treated without anesthesia, for instance. There were very many others, and I mean, if I were to take a knife and cut into my finger right now, I won't be able to bear it. And under heightened, fear and shock that the Palestinians are suffering at the moment, having to endure a surgery with no tools or very little tools. What goes on in a situation like that?
The problem is when the casualties come into the emergency room in Gaza, they come in mass number. We are not talking about one patient after the other. We are talking about hundreds of patients coming to the emergency room at once. And we as doctors, then we have to make a decision who's to treat and who's not to treat. Severe complicated injuries are not being treated right now in Gaza because we don't have much time to treat these people. If we spend much time treating these people, many other people with mild to moderate injury will lose their lives. That's why these people with complicated injuries are being left to die. We are not playing God's rule, but this is the reality right now. Many hospitals have been closed or attacked or out of service right now, including the biggest hospital in Gaza, which is the Shifa Hospital. And many doctors have been also detained and arrested or even killed by the Israeli army. The amount and the capacity of the hospital that is working now is very, very, very limited. I remember one story of a woman, that pregnant woman, she has to go under cesarean section, and you have to know, as the wars continue, we're running out every time out of medicine, we're running out of anesthesia, we run out of painkillers. We had to do the cesarean section by the woman, and it was the decision whether we do it and save one, save whether the mother or the children, or we do nothing.
And both ends up dying. Yes,
and we did the operation without anesthesia. The child survived, but the mother didn't. The lucky ones are the one who injured in the beginning of the war, because even we were deciding not to treat them and let them die. They were not dying in pain, but the people who are dying now are dying in pain and severe agony. And as a doctor, this is the worst feeling that you can have, just seeing the people suffering and seeing the people dying, and you can't do anything about it. And if you have the capacity and the equipment and the time, these lives can be saved.
How does 2014 compare to what you are seeing right now?
2014 was a war. This, what we experience right now, is a genocide. It's nothing compared of what we have in 2014. In 2014, almost all the hospitals in Gaza Strip were functioning. We already had lack of instrument, medicine, but we were still running. Everything was still running. There were doctors coming from all over the world in order to help. Now the situation is following. There is almost no functional hospital. There is lack of doctors, nurses, bed, medicine, and no one is allowed to enter Gaza and help the people of Gaza, especially surgeon. I myself tried. I was almost 2.5 weeks in Egypt, tried to cross the Egyptian border in order to help the people, or try to help the people there in Gaza, and I was not allowed to.
I can't even imagine what that must feel like. The will to want to help, to want to push through on a land where you belong, that is yours, that you've grown up in, and you can't. I'm sure you were quite angry.
Not only angry, also frustrated. Nothing is worse than the feeling of being helpless, the feeling of wanting to do something, but you are not allowed to, and you can make a difference, you can help, but they just don't let us enter Gaza Strip. They don't want the people to get help. They want the people to suffer. They want the people to die.
And that is evidenced by the fact that there is no clean water, no gas, no electricity, no fuel that is allowed at the moment into Gaza, no medical supplies. And, it is the food, but that is even more concerning, because they're busy going off there, standing at the border in trucks and not being allowed to come into the Gaza Strip, and particularly in Rafah, where there is now a very high concentration of Palestinians. And so you spoke about your sister and others that are still there, scattered in different places, and what they are right now is not just fearful of surviving, or rather fearful of the insecurity that they're confronted with, but the fact that they are hungry. And so how dire is that hunger problem at the moment in where Palestinians still find themselves in Gaza?
At the beginning of the war, Israel decided to divide Gaza into north and south, asking the people of the north to go to the south. Over 1 million people went to the south because it designated as a safe area. But it was not, and it is not, and it won't be a safe area. The people in Rafah are suffering from not only starvation, but also from that they have no place to stay in. They stay in the street, but their relative in the schools, everywhere. Rafah is only 64 square kilometer, and right now is over 1 million people are staying there. Diseases have been spread everywhere, malnutrition, but the real starvation is in the north of Gaza, because all the humanitarian aid are entering the south of Gaza, but none can reach the north of Gaza. And when we're talking about a humanitarian aid, we're talking about 1 or 2 trucks every 2 or 3 weeks in the best scenario. And the normal consumption of the people of Gaza before the war was almost more than 300 trucks per day. The people in the north started to mix animal and bird feeds with the flour in order to make breads. Malnutrition have spread everywhere. Even premature babies are dying from hunger. And this is reported everywhere now in the north of Gaza. This is how bad the situation there is.
And speaking about those children, not just those premature babies that are dying from hunger because there isn't enough food or there isn't hardly any food available at the moment. We've seen the effects of some of these bombs that are going off, and maybe you can give me a little bit more information as a medical professional as well. We've seen when these bombs go off, and the victims of these bombs a lot of them happen to be children. And these children look as if though they are sleeping. One I think surgeon or one clinician described it as before the bomb detonates and it falls to the ground, it sucks air from the region where it's about to fall. And what it does is that it literally chokes the baby or the child because those lungs aren't as developed perhaps as the adult's lungs are. And that is why some of these babies look as if though they are sleeping when it is, of course, they have passed on. How regular of an experience is that level of torture for those babies in Gaza?
There is 2 things. You're right with your description of what you described. The thing, and the second thing is they are always bombed while they're sleeping. These are innocent people who are staying at home, sleeping at their home, and they have been bombed. They were already sleeping. I have to mention that the majority of the people killed in Gaza right now are children. We are talking about over 13,000 children have been killed in this war. There was no war in the history where so many children died in so short time. This is a war against children. But we only forget one thing: the injured children.
Mm-hmm.
Many children have been now disabled. Israel has just created a generation of disabled children. And in Gaza, we don't have the capacity or the ability to help such children. And they must be helped, inshallah, after the war.
Inshallah. And in spite of this being the experience since October the 7th, and even before then, for the past 75 years, routinely Palestinians are being attacked in this way. If it's not that they're expelled from their land, have their olives stolen, determine where they and how much they can fish, what their movement is, particularly in the West Bank, stopping aid and other necessities getting into Gaza, facilitating Palestinians moving in and out of Gaza, etc. This is the common experience of being Palestinian. But there's been a great amount of resilience that we've seen come from the Palestinians, that a mother who's lost a child says, Allah knows best, we will continue to fight and resist, that we will continue to stay on this land, we have no interest in running into the desert with Egypt, and we trust Allah's plan and we are committed to it. Where does that come from? Of course, you can use Islam as a fundamental premise, but we are all human beings as well, and we all respond very differently. And so one of the things that I'm often challenged with is we learn a great deal of resilience from what the Palestinians are showing at the moment, and to be able to put our trust wholeheartedly in our Creator as one experience. But then I'm also divided between the fact, and something that you said a bit earlier, that Palestinians want to live. They enjoy life. They want to live. And so it's contrasting between those two emotions that I personally always struggle with.
It first of all, I think it comes also from the belief that and the religion, and that people take this staying in the land and refusing to leave it is a part of resistance and a part of the belief that they are on ribat when they do such something like that. And second thing, people have learned from the mistake in 1948. In 1948, they have been displaced and kicked out from their land, and they have been told that they will be able to go back to their homes. But they never did. And the people in Gaza right now knows that if by doing so, it's going to be a second Nakba, and they will never be able to return to Gaza Strip again. That's why the people do not want to go to Egypt. On a lot of people, over 500,000 people stayed in the north, despite the bombing and killing and complete destruction of the north. There are people who still stayed there because they believe once they leave their land, they will never be able to return. Mm-hmm. Of course, we want to live like every human being, but we can't do that without a land. Mm-hmm. In order to be able to do this, we have to stay in our land and have a land to do that with.
And as a Palestinian that not only is very much familiar with war and very much familiar with occupation in Gaza and in all of Palestine, I want to understand how Palestinians feel about the ceasefire question. Now, of course, there's no non-evil human being that isn't of the orientation to say there must be a ceasefire, that the bombs must stop falling, people must be able to rebuild and go back to their lives. But it would appear that becomes a complicated question when it comes conditional to continuing to keep an occupation's foot on the necks of Palestinians. And so how do you feel about this talk about a ceasefire and the continuation and even the worst of position before October the 7th?
Ceasefire must take place as soon as possible, today before tomorrow, because what's going to happen in the next few days or the next few weeks, even before Ramadan, is the invasion of Rafah. In Rafah, they are threatening the people of Rafah of ground invasion and evacuating the people into the Sinai. Many of the people will not leave Rafah and will refuse to leave Rafah, which will cause a lot of casualties and deaths in Palestine. As I told you, imagine that in 64 square kilometer, over 1.1 million people are living there, just waiting for a massacre to happen. This is why the first thing that we have to do right now is ask for ceasefire. This must be done. Palestinians have suffering from what the Israeli are doing, not only the military, but all the settlers, especially in West Bank and Gaza since 1948. This is nothing new to the Palestinian. But what is happening now is something that we cannot just ignore, and we have to do something to stop it, and not only to stop it, to prevent it from happening another time.
And the question from a listener that says, of course, it's terrible to hear the experience of the doctor, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring great relief and also help with this horrible genocide that Palestinians are suffering at the moment. What advice does the doctor have for us that appear to be helpless in this situation?
No one is helpless. Everyone can do something. First of all, I have to say that South Africa and South African are the only people who stood or still stand with the Palestinian. Even when our own brother turned their back on us in fear, what the people all over the world can do is the following. They can educate themselves about Palestine and about what's happening in Palestine, and not just leave it by themselves. They had to spread the news about what's happening. A lot of people don't know the exact details and the facts about about what's happening in Palestine. You can go to protest, join marches that go for asking for a ceasefire, because it's the only way how to pressure Israel to prevent the genocide that's going to take place, or the massacre that's going to take place in Rafah. Boycotting. There's many organizations that supports Israel and support the killing of the Palestinian children. These organizations must be boycotted. We are talking about like organizations like Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Nestle. There is always alternative. And pray for Gaza. Sometimes this is the only thing that we can do, is just praying, and may Allah accept and donate money, because money is needed for the acute phase right now, and for the people who don't have home, they don't only have a tent, or even worse, just living in the street, don't have blanket in this cold weather with the rainy weather, and also for the people who are suffering from starvation in the north of Gaza. I just informed a few days ago that the price of 25 kilogram flour bag in the north of Gaza cost over $500. $500 for a 25 kilogram flour bag.
Sure. How do you see all of this end? What do you see the future? Is there a future that you have imagined for Gaza?
Of course there's a future for Gaza. It must be. The only thing that we want it to happen right now is a ceasefire. This madness must end, and Gaza must rebuild again, and the siege must be left. Gaza is under the siege since 2007, and the people are living in an open-air prison since then. And you cannot just end this genocide and letting the things back the way it were.
Yeah.
This is not allowed to happen.
We are talking this morning to Dr. Bassel Abuwarda, a Palestinian medic who is on the Palestine Leads tour in South Africa. Dr. Abuwarda, of course, is a Gazan-based Palestinian that currently, he is from Gaza, but he's currently based in Germany, where he's completing some of his medical work. He is a renowned surgeon, a practicing surgeon, and he is and has worked at the Al-Shifa Hospital alongside people like Dr. Mads Gilbert in 2014, and is currently the co-founder of the SaveGazaProject that's instrumental in the rebuilding of the Shams Al-Amal school, and of course the awareness that is creating here in South Africa as well. Before I do let you go, Doctor, I want to maybe just quickly find out what is the SaveGazaProject that you're a part of, and how can Cape Townians relate to it or be a part of it?
So SaveGazaProject is a project that we have established after 2014, after the war, Engineer Mustafa Bahasa and I. And this is a non-governmental organization in which we were able to help many Palestinian people across Gaza Strip. And we were, as you said, we were able to rebuild the old school for disabled children, because this school has been targeted and destroyed during 2014. We had many women empowerment project teaching widows and wife of Shohada new crafts in order to be able to support their families. We were able to dig wells and provide schools with many equipment. We have been working with Colors of Hope organization, which is based here in South Africa, since 2014, and since when we have done a lot of projects with them. This is one way to be able to donate to the people of Gaza, because we still have our people in the south risking their life trying to help the other Palestinian that in need right now. And we are now joining also Salam Foundation, which is also based here in South Africa, and one of the organizer of the tour, and they are doing a lot of good job helping the people of Gaza.
Mm-hmm. And so, as we do let you go, I wonder what message do you have for Cape Townians, for South Africans, in again what their role can be? Of course, you highlighted boycotts, you highlighted awareness programs that are happening that that we can do, and of course prayer still as a powerful tool to seek the liberation of the Palestinian people. As a parting word to the listeners, what, be it encouragement or motivation, is there as a Palestinian that you can share with them?
Keep supporting Palestine. Don't forget Gaza, and don't get used to the number of deaths in Gaza. Gazans are not numbers. We are not numbers. We are a human being. Don't get used to 100, 200 deaths in the day. Just keep protesting and asking for a ceasefire, because these are the things that can change and will change what's happening in Gaza right now.
Let's end off with this following WhatsApp message that says, "Our hearts are bleeding for all of the brave Palestinians. May Allah send down victory soon, sabr and success to our beloved brave doctor. May Allah grant you, your beloved parents, and all of your family members Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen, inshallah."
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here.
That Dr. Bassel, that is in studio with us this morning for a little bit of an extended conversation. Dr. Bassel Abuwarda, a Palestinian medic that is part of the Palestine Leads tour in South Africa. I'll take more of your WhatsApp messages on 0786 10 11 12 very, very shortly. You can also give me a call on 021 699 1786.